right, that was not the intro that I planned, but that's okay. We'll roll with it this morning. Good morning, everyone. It's Tim Cavey from the Teachers on Fire podcast, and I am so excited to connect with these fine people this morning. We've got a writing focus today, and I'm excited to feature some awesome writers from the Teachers on Fire magazine publication on Medium. And we might have to explain a little bit more about what that is and how Medium works in a moment. But first of all, let's go around and introduce ourselves. Would you talk about, first of all, what your context in education looks like, and then maybe something really quick about your history of writing? I know that's hard to put in a nutshell, but if you can give us the 1-minute version of sort of where you've been as a writer up to today, that would be interesting to hear. So Heather, over to you.
Hi. My name is Heather Edick, and I am an English teacher. I teach 10th grade and 11th grade English plus AP Literature and Creative Writing. And the fall has been a challenge for me as a writer because the school year has been so challenging, and we're all getting used to a new way of teaching and learning. So I've been tired. Tired and things have had to be put to the side, and that's one of them. So, but I'm trying to do once a week. I'm trying to write something once a week.
Thank you, Heather. Debbie, over to you.
Well, I can definitely relate to what Heather just said. I'm Debbie Tannenbaum. I am a technology coach at an elementary school in Northern Virginia. I'm starting my 3rd year in that position, and this year has been exhausting. So I can definitely relate to the tiredness. It seems like as a tech coach, I'm wanted 24/7, and there's just not enough hours in the day. So definitely can relate to that.
Thanks, Debbie. Kelly, over to you.
Okay, so I got a few things going on here. I just got a job. I start on Monday. I'm a grade 7-8 online teacher. Yes, thank you. I also am a practical coach at the university for pre-service teachers. I'm also at the point where I'm finishing my PhD. And so I have been I've been working on my dissertation. So that's kind of where I've been going. And it's been really busy, and I have a feeling it's going to get busier.
And that whole mix, that balance between the professional academic writing and the fun writing is really tricky to navigate as well. So I hope we get to be able to come back to that. But lastly, Tammy, tell us about your context and what writing looks like for you right now.
So I'm Tammy Breitweiser, and I'm currently a kindergarten teacher in Southern Wisconsin. And I also do, I still do some coaching, some teacher coaching on the side as well. Writing is an everyday thing for me. So I don't have to remind myself to write. It's like eating and breathing. I've been doing it my whole life. So that is still going strong, but kindergartners are quite inspiring when it comes to that. They say weird things. So that's always fun. And then plus I get to write with them as well. So that's how that looks.
All right. Well, it's so good to have each of you here. And there's so many different things that I want to jump into, but let's try this. Oh, as I bump my coffee here, getting too excited. Let's try this question just to sort of get settled. And Heather started us out here, but what has the fall been like for you as a writer? I will tell you that this is a painful topic for me because my word for the year is actually write. And so I had some lofty goals and some metrics that I was hoping to hit. And that included 2 blog posts a week, 1 education and 1 personal. And so that hasn't quite lived up. Although, thankfully, sometimes goals do this. It has brought record writing for me as well. So that's something I can celebrate. But I would say for most of the year up until August, I was putting out 1 education blog post a week. And then I started a new AP position around mid-August. And since then, it's been a month of just, a lot of 10 to 12 hour days. and being really buried and feeling like the inbox is never fully resolved and there are always things to do. And it's really hard to write in that environment. There still are some ways, and I know Tammy will have some ideas on that, but what has writing looked like for you? Heather, you talked to that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Anything more to add, and how do you see yourself hopefully coming back to it?
I've been trying to schedule everything. So I think that if I can get that part on the schedule, I may have more success with being able to write more than once a week. But
all right. And Debbie, what's it been like for you this fall? You seem to be pretty faithful, but in terms of numbers, what does that look like?
It's been hard for me this fall. Not only have I been extremely busy, but in the last week or so, I haven't been feeling that great. So I've been having some health issues. So I've really been learning to give myself a little bit of grace when it comes to that. I like to write once a week. It hasn't been happening, but I have to understand that this year is like a year like no other. And, you know, I started writing in February of 19, and my goal is I want to keep writing, and even if it's once or twice a month, you know, I've got to kind of keep that in mind, because I find that helping people solve tech problems does not inspire me. Teaching people how to do cool things inspires me. So right now I'm not as inspired as I might necessarily like to be.
Right. Right. That's a very different role, sort of moving from or let's say a coach or a pedagogy instruction over to troubleshooting. Right. That's a very different.
It's just not as inspiring.
Yeah. I get that. Kelly, you talked about the dissertation. I know you've been a little quieter on the blogging side. What's that been like for you in the last few months?
Well, I found I write every day. So I do something I picked up, and I do write every day. It's just that I haven't actually finished anything. It's been a case of, I find that when I'm doing the whole academic writing, that you write, like I tend to write in 45-minute bursts, and I take 10-15-minute stretches. But it's hard to make that shift from academic to just writing for my, a blog. I was doing okay for a while, and then as the time frame came that I got closer and closer to finishing, I tend to spend all my active writing time trying to get my dissertation finished. And I find that even though I do write every day, I just never. Nothing's in a finished stage. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I think once I get done this thing, that I'll be able to clean up and post. I do write every day. I do a daily, I call it. So if you check out my PD today on Twitter, the hashtag, every day I put out a what I call a daily, and it's just kind of an inspirational thing. I also do it for SaskEd Chat. And so because I'm the moderator of SaskEd Chat, every day I put out a daily for SaskEd Chat for teachers. So I write and I post every day on Twitter. It's just that I don't write my blogs and to a point where they're finished enough that I feel that I can post them.
All right. Well, you're making me curious. You're giving me more question ideas for our lightning round. I want to know if that daily writing is analog or digital. So I look forward to hearing more about that. But Tammy, I'm so excited to have you in this group because you are the machine. You've been the consistent one. So we're going to just draw inspiration from you this morning, Tammy. But what is right? And then, by the way, I know you write on multiple publications. You have your blog. So tell us what the writing has been like for you lately and maybe in the last few months and since the start of school.
Well, I'm glad I'm inspiring. I am the accidental inspirationalist, so that works. Kind of piggybacking off of what Heather said, I start my day with writing, so I think that time blocking can be really important. And then I make lists for myself as well, so that helps. I know Tim knows I do a blog post called the weekend coffee share. So I kind of highlight things from my week personally and in education. And one thing I started doing is doing a weekly review for myself, and I actually schedule it and send the document to myself in Google Calendar. And so those are just like the highlights from the week. I log delights that are personal and educational. And one thing I started doing is because I was inspired by Tim to do the one education article a week, which has been hit or miss. I usually do and either put it on, our Medium magazine, or sometimes I do it on my blog and just connect it to the Two Writing Teachers blog. But one thing I've started doing there is putting potential article titles, because sometimes it's harder to do the educational pieces. I'm like, well, what do I want to talk about today? I mean, there's so much we can talk about, but I try to be inspired by my little people every day. I also find it easier when you make those little micro movements with your kids every day. I want to start logging some more of that for the education. So I do writing every morning. I tend to do that by hand, but then throughout the day, things get typed. My brain seems to work faster as we get later in the day.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you made me think of another great lightning round question, which is, where do you keep track of your future blog post titles and topics? I know you all have a system for that, so I'm looking forward to hearing that. I want to welcome Jamie to the discussion. Jamie, good to have you. You've submitted a few pieces on the magazine as well.
What's happening, guys?
Yeah, so Jamie, tell us about your context in education and what has writing looked like for you in the last month or two?
It's been crazy. I'm a vice principal of Homedale High School in New Jersey. Been in education this is my 19th year. I was a district-wide peer leadership coordinator for the third largest high school and district in New Jersey. Just jumped to administration, and meeting up with Tim here in terms of, media mag and doing Teachers on Fire magazine. It's the writing concept and context has just been everything I'm dealing with on a daily basis, really, since we went into quarantine. That just kind of lit the fire, I guess, no pun intended, in terms of just wanting to share out stories, real-time episodes of what me personally I've been dealing with my district and, friends that I network with. It's just kind of taking the stories from students, parents, the community, and trying to bring them to life. And just my goal with collaboration in this and my writing is to hopefully just help other educators and help students, help parents, help, districts, find solutions and ways to be creative and innovative and not be stagnant and see this as a negative, even though it's not something we want to be happening in this world. I think, becoming an ally to adversity right now is probably the best message we could be sending across the board to our schools and communities, and really teaching our students how to embrace this moment and seeing it as an opportunity to look back years from now on, something they could celebrate that no other school, class, or district or building will ever experience again, even though, again, we didn't ask for it.
Yeah, it's an opportunity of sorts, right? And I think back to a podcast of Tammy's that I was listening to, I think months ago, Tammy, where she asked, how does this situation serve me? Or you could say, how does it serve us? And that's a complete paradigm flip. But there are some silver linings. There are some opportunities. And we know that in the midst of this great stress, educators have been growing a lot. Well, I think another big picture question that would be really helpful for all of us and interesting to hear from others is the question of why. Why do we write about education in particular? And I know some of us try to do some other writing, but why do we write about education and how does it impact us? How does it influence our practice and our thinking? Heather?
I've been writing about it ever since I decided to change careers and get certified to teach secondary education, secondary English, and I but I increased my blogging and whatnot to become part of the conversation overall, and that's why I reached out to you and said I would love to write for your magazine, Tim, because I wanted to be instead of just having a blog out there in the ether, as I call it. I actually really wanted to be part of a conversation with people and to share my experiences, to get feedback, or maybe, to actually help somebody else who might be going through similar things. So I write as a form of professional development, and I also write to be social. So that's it in a nutshell.
That is a really nice part of those publications on Medium. And I don't know how deep we'll go on Medium, but Medium is this curated platform of blog posts, and where everyone does have their own unique profile. And yet within that, you can create these publications. And I should say, certainly Teachers on Fire magazine is not the only publication. There are many great ones. And I know most of you would be familiar with Age of Awareness, which is kind of the really big one that features a lot of education posts, and they cover other topics as well. And so I will never be offended when you publish over there. I think you've got to sort of pick your spots and see what works. But you're right, Medium does create a bit of that community feeling. Debbie, what about you? What's your why for education?
Well, in 2019, I participated in a couple of different Twitter book club chats, and during them everyone was like, well, what's your blog, what's your webpage? And I didn't have one at that point. And so I reached out to Sam Fesich, who I had met at ISTE, and I was like, when I was like, well, I'm thinking about doing this, can you look this over? And she looked at it and she's like, well, yeah, you should do this. You need to tell your story. Your story's different than other people's. And I published, and I've been going since 2019, and I originally did it just because I wanted to see if I could, and I did it for myself, and I still do it for myself, but I learned so much from my blog posts, even when it's something stupid, like when you and I tried to do Instagram Live and I totally flubbed it. But I learned so much through that reflective process of writing. And when I don't do it, I miss it. But it really has helped me, I feel like, become a much better educator. Just like becoming a connective educator has helped me become a better educator.
And Debbie, and we'll talk about promotion hopefully in a moment, but you've got such a loyal fan club of really high profile education stars on Twitter who really cheerlead your stuff. So that's really awesome as well.
It's been really awesome. I put a post about Tara Martin a little over a year ago, and she basically told me whenever I post, I should tag her. Yeah. It's like awesome. Like, she's like a superstar.
Yeah, it's so fun. Kelly, what's your why when it comes to this non-academic version of education writing?
So I guess I've been blogging for about off and on about 15 years. I started before, I mean, it's kind of like Twitter and all the rest. I started before most people even knew what it was. So my reason for writing is because I want to share my experiences. I mean, I have 25 years as a teacher and an administrator. I've taught all grade levels. I've, presented at conferences, and I want to share my experiences. I also like to be able to have conversations with people. And blogging is a different conversation than Twitter or Instagram or any of the social media platforms. You just have a different way of communicating with people. I guess my biggest reason for continuing to blog is it helps me work out some of the things I'm thinking about in education. So every about 10 years, I tend to make a shift in my what I'm doing in education. So my first 10 years, I was a classroom teacher. next 10 years or 13 years, I was an administrator in, various buildings. And now I made a shift again. So just discussing the reasons for those shifts and how I see education changing is the reason that I write.
All right. Thanks, Kelly. Tammy, over to you. What's your why? And I guess particularly the education stuff.
So my story is very similar to everyone else who shared. I didn't start blogging until like 2012. And this is my 25th year in education. And I've been a classroom teacher and a reading specialist and a coach. And then I went back to classroom teaching this year. And it was about community for me. And when I was a TAP master teacher, that's when I started the blog, because I always seem to find myself in these positions that are different than all the other people around me. And so even when I first left the university, I found out that teaching was actually a lot more lonely than they tell you that it is. I mean, we talk about collaboration and teams and things, but a lot of times it's you in your classroom with your kids, or you in your job doing things. And so that was a little different. So I really missed that connection. And I love learning from other people. So originally I had reached out just to find some other people who did a similar job that what I did. Blogging really helps me, especially with the education, because I had a coach that was coaching me, and she said, Tammy, your brain works a little faster and a little different than other people. I tend to skip steps. So blogging helps me kind of back up and fill in all the pieces step by step, because I have to think about, how am I going to teach this to somebody else? And with little people, I tend to do that better. But adults, for the longest time, I had a problem because I thought, well, they should know better. They're adults. And one of the biggest paradigm shifts I had a couple of years ago was, it doesn't matter whether you're 5 or 50. New learning is new learning. So if it's new, you have to back up and do those steps. So, and I think that blogging was a big contribution to that aha moment.
You mentioned how long you've been in the profession, and it just suddenly struck me that I think we're all kind of at a similar fate. I don't want to offend anyone, but I think we're all kind of at the same stage in our lives in education. And that gives me questions about the future of blogging, which would be another interesting question. But yeah, so Jamie, take it to your side of things. What is your why, and what do you gain from it? How does it influence your practice? I know you spoke to this a little bit, but do you have anything to add?
Sure. I mean, my why is just connectivity, with anybody I can that's outside of my realm, at home. And I think I'm very new to this game. Ironically, it's just something that I never realized how much value could be in this, meeting, like people like you guys, and just other educators who are passionate. And it's really become almost like a digital growth experience, for my mindset of what I want to help students embrace, if that's my why. And what I'm getting out of this right now is just opportunity to showcase and model, for my colleagues and for my admin team and for my staff. And again, even at a high school level, like my rising seniors that are going into the next level, showing them the positive way to use social media and how it can be something that can benefit you, towards any profession you go into, and just in real world application. I feel like that's what I've gotten out of this the most. It's kind of reinvented myself as an educator and really show me like I'm starting from scratch again and growing something organically that's making me better. Maybe I was stale and kind of complacent for a few years and just looking for the what's next as much as I was looking for a why. I think I was looking for a what, in terms of improving myself. And this online connection has just been enormous for me personally. Awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. I'm going to echo what a lot of you said and add in my 2 cents and say that for me, there's nothing more powerful in terms of a self-reflective process than sitting down and thinking about my practice and actually writing it. Because I have experienced teaching for years without ever writing a post, without ever blogging, and without ever really being forced to do a whole lot of self-reflection. outside of, you know, a little professional goal exercise that my district gives me or whatever. So, you know, as a new AP, and Jamie, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but and I know this is not an original idea, but I was thinking, like, imagine if we could find some internal professional time in our schools to say, okay, teachers, find a quiet space, do 45 minutes of writing, reflective writing about your practice, and then share those pieces. How rich would that be? I mean, that just kind of thrills me to think about it, but you know, we might have a riot on our hands if we made all teachers do that, but I know it would be rich because, again, you know, it forces us into that self-reflective space. And we know from all the research that metacognition and agency and ownership of their own learning helps students when they can actually reflect and do some self-assessment. The same is true of educators. You know, we need to take that time as well. So I am, if it's okay with you, I'm going to jump right into a lightning round. And I think it's not to say we don't have anything more of substance to say, but I've got a growing list of lightning round questions that I think would be really fun to sort of compare notes on. So are you guys ready? Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll keep following the same order. I don't know if the faces are showing up on the screen in the same order for you as they are for me, but I'm going to start hitting you with some questions. So first of all, what is your favorite time of the day to write, Heather?
Between 4:30 and 5 in the morning.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Debbie?
My favorite time is to write is like Sunday afternoon, like as I'm getting ready for the week, kind of get 1 week off, the next week started.
All right. Kelly. Oh, Kelly, you're muted, it looks like.
Okay, so my favorite time to write would be all day long, because that's what I do.
Tammy?
Right when I first wake up, coffee and writing to start the day.
And are you an early person like Heather?
Yes. I often am writing at about the same time as Heather is.
Wow.
Sometimes earlier. Yeah.
Well, I wake up at 5, but Heather, you must get up at 4 or something ungodly like that. Jamie, what about you?
I'm definitely not getting up at 4 a.m. So I'm definitely most productive with my writing late at night when the whole fam's asleep, you know, 11, midnight, that kind of thing. That's usually where I get to wind down and just super quiet, peaceful. I live by the beach, so it's just, you know, I can hear the ocean and stuff, and it's just definitely a perfect setting.
Well, and that's one of my questions is what are the sounds that you like going on in the background? Next question is coffee or other beverage? I have a feeling I know where this is going to go, but Heather?
Coffee.
Coffee, okay. Debbie?
I don't drink coffee. I actually drink caffeinated water. I'm not a coffee person.
Caffeinated water. Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Kelly?
Coffee.
Tammy?
Black coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely coffee. Absolutely.
All right. So no wine drinkers here in the group. All right. Or
I didn't know it was that kind of beverage.
Or like wine writers, I guess. Yeah.
Not when I'm writing. Not when I'm writing.
Not writing. Yeah.
Well, I may do, you know, consume something like that, but I don't post those writings.
That's dangerous.
Like goes to a different folder. All right. Music or other sounds. I've come across this YouTube channel called Bloom, BLUME, that's got some amazing chill mixes, and that's been my go-to for the last few months. Heather, what's your favorite writing sound or background, or is it nothing at all?
Nothing, you know, and usually everybody else is asleep, so right. Including the cats. So that's it.
You've got to find that me time, right? And
yes,
promote
that's my me time.
Yeah.
And since my son was born and he's 19 now, that those hours, you know, 4 to 6. Yeah.
Debbie, sounds.
I like it to be quiet. I don't like a whole lot of noise when I'm writing. I really just like to focus on my thoughts. So.
All right. Fair enough. Kelly?
I use a site called Focus at Will. It's ambient music. It allows you to select your music for a particular, I guess, style and what you're doing. So I tend to use the one particular one for my writing, and it works really well.
Focus at Will combines neuroscience and music to boost productivity and tune out distractions. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Tammy.
Usually silence, but if I'm having trouble focusing, then I will go to white noise.
What's your favorite of the white noise genre?
So if you, it's very complicated. If you type in white noise to YouTube, there is one that has, it says like white noise for study power or something. It has like a little guy on it with a brain, and that's the one I like. It was a random pick and it worked. So it does help me focus.
Jamie, your favorite writing background? You mentioned the waves.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm a professional musician. I've been doing that for 20 years, so I'm a music guy, all over the place. But yeah, anything calming like that, you know, I'm all about the noise machines and everything else. But I usually will write something or you know, record something and then have that playing, and then write, and then ultimately, hopefully, that comes into some sort of song in the end of it.
Let's talk about rough composition. Where does that happen? Is it, have you got a yellow legal pad? Have you got something else? For me, it's just starts plain and simple right here in Google Docs. And then when I feel like it's 90% there, I move it over into Medium. And I'm also, by the way, repurposing stuff eventually after Medium on my blog, teachersonfire.net. So there's kind of a process, but the rough composition starts in Google Docs. I'm curious to hear if there are any analog people, if there are any people that have to start with pen, paper. Heather, what does that look like for you?
Well, a couple of posts ago, I needed to use the legal pad. I was tired of looking at my computer, right? So I did that, and then I just decided to upload JPEGs of my post instead of retyping it. But most of the time I start out in a Google Doc or on my personal blog, which is a WordPress installation. So I, you know, somewhere like that. It's normally digital, but.
All right, Debbie.
Well, I use Google Sites, and I usually do start off on my Google site. My initial blog page is kind of where I draft everything. So I start there, and then from there, I copy it into any of the other places where I publish. But I definitely find that the typing helps me to get some of those thoughts out in a different way.
Right. Right. Kelly?
I write in Evernote.
All right.
I do everything in Evernote. I have so many different kind of things that are going on that I needed one place to. I keep my ideas for blogs. I keep memos for my dissertation. I do all my writing and things in there and notebooks, and then I tend to just copy and paste into other places and then do the fixing and all the rest of it in there. But most of my pieces are written in Evernote, and I just find it easier because I can write anywhere. Yeah, and sometimes those ideas come, you know. I found, especially as writing academically, that I would have yes. And I needed to write it down. I was on a bus. So it would go straight into my phone. And what I also like about it is I can do audio. So that's really important too.
Interesting. Does Evernote have any kind of a Grammarly or a grammar check or any prompts? Okay.
Yeah, I use because I use Grammarly, I can just attach it to the writing, and then that helps too. Yeah.
Tammy, we see you taking notes here by hand, so I know that's a part of your process somehow, but what does the rough composition look like for you?
So nonfiction usually starts as some sort of mind map or list, and then I will take that and free write, and then it will go into Google Docs, and then I'll copy and paste it just like others in other somewhere else. But I don't use Evernote, but I use Google Keep. So again, if you're driving or you're on a bus or you're somewhere else, I'll take notes. I also sometimes will do research, and I can send websites and articles then to myself and save them in there. And Google Keep is great because it saves to the cloud, because on another phone that I lost a bunch of notes. And then you can turn it into a Google Doc automatically, and then I can combine some of those things. But yeah, everything usually starts out handwritten first.
All right. From the hand to the digital. And Jamie, what's your rough composition tool of choice?
Yeah, I follow the same path, but I'm probably a little more sporadic and chaotic. I'm sticky notes and post-it notes everywhere. Yep, in my car, in my book bag, everything. And I love like having some sort of journal. I just think old school writing, it actually motivates me more because it gets me in that mode of like true writing. And then I have been dabbling in Google Keep. I'm just learning that because the new district I'm at is a Google school. So Google Docs is where I'm at, and then Google Keep, everyone's like, you got to do it. So I'm just getting turned on to it, and it's actually super easy and makes it, worthwhile in the end.
Awesome. Well, my next question might be a bit of overlap, so maybe I won't go to everyone unless you have a different tool to share, and that is simply, how do you collect future blog post topics and titles? Right now, I am using Google Tasks, which is, if you're in a Google Doc, you've got those three icons on the far right side: Keep, Calendar, and Tasks. So I'm actually enjoying using Tasks. Tammy, I know you use Keep, as you mentioned. And Kelly, I'm assuming you collect your titles and topics in Evernote as well. Does anyone else have another tool that you use just to collect those future posts?
Well, one of my goals this year is to challenge myself to write for another year. So I kind of try to every day. I haven't been doing this great with it. Monitor how I'm doing on my challenge goals. So I have one box that says, blog for another year. So I try to write down some ideas in there in my journal.
Okay, journal.
Mm-hmm.
I have a passion planner, and so in my paper, I'll sometimes put things in there. And like Debbie, if I have something that I want to make sure I do like every day, like I'll put little check boxes in there, and that seems to keep me on track, but it's a little different than the digital.
I start a draft on my personal blog, and I can use the app for WordPress.com. So if I happen to be away from my computer, I just open up the app and I start another draft. And then when I want to get to it, then I go back and, like I put in a title, and then when I'm ready to write, I go back and write it.
It's really interesting to read on Medium style posts, people who write about, style advice, just the importance of a headline. Because when people are scrolling through posts, particularly the way it shows up in emails from Medium, you've got the headline and you've got the subtitle, and that's it. So you've got about 1 or 2 seconds to grab a reader. So it's so important to have a compelling headline, or at least a headline that makes sense to a reader. So many other questions. Let me get into a few more. A favorite current education blogger, or we could go to someone outside of education. I think it would be more interesting to stick inside, if there is somebody. Let's say someone for me, I'm going to lead the way here and say someone for me is, I believe she's a middle school teacher, and I think in Wisconsin, Tammy, but that is Pernille Rip. I'm sure you've heard of her or come across her. And she has 4 boys, and she has been blogging, I think, twice a week. I could be wrong on that. I think it was twice a week for a while. Maybe it's slowed, but she is just incredible. And I had her on the podcast, and she talks about her style, and I cannot do this, but she says she just sits down and it lets it flow, and does very little revision, or, doesn't second guess herself. She just lets it flow and then publishes. She's got an enormous following. It's led to books and speaking gigs all over the place. Just an amazing educator, but really has built an incredible platform for herself. So Pernille Rip is my shout out. There are so many good ones. Who outside of this group is inspiring you, Heather?
I've been following at teachthought.com for many years now, and Terry Hike happens to be one of my favorite teachers and writers, and he's built quite a website at this point. But his main focus is on project-based learning, and also he loves understanding by design, which is Wiggins and McTeague, and I love them too. So anytime he posts something, I'm devouring it pretty much. But his website is now bigger than when he first started. It was just him and one other person, and now it's he has like a whole staff, I think, or at least people who write for him regularly. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, amazing. I've got his site here, and I'm not even familiar with Terry Hike, so I'll have to check him out on Twitter later. Debbie, who's inspiring you in the education blog space?
Well, the first person who came to my mind was George Couros. I've been listening to his podcast. I read his blog posts afterwards. I don't know. There's just something about the way he blogs that really speaks to me and helps me, inspires me. Listening to the struggles and bringing it together. A lot of my blog posts are about things I struggle with and how I kind of make peace with it. And I feel like a lot of his posts inspire me to do that.
And right now, his current format is email newsletters is the personal, professional, and the profound. And George is intensely affectionate, right, and emotional, and so that creates the space for him to share all of that too. Kelly, what about you? Who's inspiring you right now?
I like David Truss. So he writes at Paradigms. He writes every day, just short pieces. And I've known David for quite a while, and I just like his style. I like that. I mean, he talks about all kinds of different things that are about education. I mean, he's a principal at an online school, a hub school in BC, and I find his thoughts and ideas to be something that really helps me to refocus. I also have a non-educator, Todd Henry, and so I read his stuff quite a bit.
All right, Tammy knows that name.
I do.
And Tammy, who's inspiring you right now?
So always Kelly Gallagher and Penny Kittle, and they did an awesome YouTube web series at the beginning of the pandemic about what they were each writing in their notebooks. And yes, and I saw Pernille speak at the Indiana State Reading Association, and she was amazing and so warm and like will sit down with people and talk. But no, she's an amazing individual, and the stuff she shares is just awesome. But another blog I really like is the coaching sketch note book, Dr. Stephanie Affinito. I really like her too. She just recently started a podcast as well, so I really enjoy her.
All right. And Jamie, who's inspiring you right now?
Definitely first person that comes into my mind is Thomas Murray from Future Ready Schools. Yeah. He's his latest book, Personal and Authentic. I just think when it comes to revitalization of school culture, it's a simplistic concept that he brings to the table, but the way he, shares it out, he gets you thinking 5 steps ahead based off of the last 5 steps you took. And I think in terms of starting off anything, he really gets me going in terms of trying to take old concepts that I've had in my content and, in my writing and try to reinvent it and turn it into something where it can motivate a new follower. So I really like him a lot.
Awesome. Okay, that was a good round. I'm going to have to rewatch this tape later and write down more of these names. But I hope you're all doing okay. We're going a little bit over time. I've got just a couple quick questions here as we close. And if you need to take off, just go ahead and let us know. We won't be offended. But I'm curious, is there a book that really fires you up to write? One that I read in the last year that was so motivating was You Are a Writer by Jeff Goins. And I think his premise is like don't think of yourself as an educator or this person over here who would like to write. Think of yourself as a writer. And just that simple shift is really powerful. So that's all I will say. But if I could recommend a book that if you're looking for motivation, he was so good. Is there another book that really motivates you to write? Heather?
When I'm teaching creative writing, so I'm trying to find those types of books. But there's one that I just read recently called X-Ray Reading, by Roy Peter Clark, who is a writing teacher. And what he does is he takes, famous classics, and then he takes them apart, does an X-ray of them, and then has writing exercises at the end of each chapter. And he's very encouraging throughout the book. He just letting people know that writing is a skill that can be developed, and that it's not something that you need to have naturally, so to speak. It is just something that if you commit to it, you can get better. And
that's very growth mindset.
Yeah.
Growth mindset. Yeah. Debbie?
I mentioned Tara Martin earlier, but Be Real to me is one of those books that really inspires me, bringing up that vulnerability, being real, really talking about how, and looking at yourself more holistically and looking how you grow. That's been a very inspirational book for me as far as inspiring me to write.
Awesome. Love Tara. Kelly?
I have one author, 3 books. Todd Henry, Accidental Creative, Die Empty, and Louder Than Words. And those 3 books have been instrumental in helping me to write, to think of myself as a writer and somebody who has something to say that's worthwhile.
Right. Cool. Well put. Tammy?
Usually I add books to other people's Amazon cart, and now today it's going to cost me some money, I see. So the writing book that is always my go-to is Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. Yeah. I cannot open that book and not be inspired to write. So I absolutely adore that book.
Yes, it's very good.
Writing Down the Bones. Okay, I'm going to check that out. And Jamie?
One of the best ones I read in the last year is Hamish Brewer's Relentless.
Oh, that's
he's a big inspiration to me. Just I love how fearless he is in terms of, his mantra of disrupting the norm of education, fully tatted, and just he brings in the New Zealand rugby team, talking about the symbolism of the haka and tradition and family and leaving a legacy. And it's something that I've used myself with my peer program for years, and then discovering him and hearing him share that and bring it to a whole nother level for me. It's something that I incorporate in all my speaking engagements and with my students and staff. So he's definitely huge on my list.
Awesome.
I need that for my at-risk kids. So I'm going to look that up.
Yeah.
It's a great book.
Is it? Yes.
And it's funny because that's exactly what it's for. If you're looking into like restorative practices, trying to reach across the level, and not saying that traditional education can't still exist, but you can coexist with, not being outside the box, but maybe underneath it or to the side of it. And that's kind of his take on things. Mm-hmm. And he's in a very tough school district, a tough area, and he has brought those kids to embracing school culture on such a level that it's like I want to emulate it. It's amazing. So definitely.
Yeah, one of my friends actually teaches at his school, and she says it's a gift every day to be able to work under him. She says it inspires her in ways she's never imagined she could be inspired.
Yeah, you watch his YouTube clips, and it's Jonathan Alsheimer as well. Next level teaching. Here's another monster. He's just a beast, and those guys. I mean, they're just doing incredible things and making noise for the right reasons. So definitely both of those guys.
Another book I've got to squeeze in here is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. That was a huge inspiration for me, and I know it will be for you as well. So as we wrap up, I want you to share your handles and where you can be found in a moment, but sort of just one step before that is, what does your sharing and promotional process look like? Jeff Goins, I mentioned you are a writer. He talks about how we have these sort of pure creatives who love to write, who maybe hate the whole social media world and don't want to be a part of it. But unfortunately, in the world we're living in, you have to be able to pierce the noise. You have to be able to raise your visibility and get people's attention, or people don't know you exist and they don't know what you're doing. It's just a necessary part of the process. So what does that look like for you? I want to mention a writer who has been featured a few times on the magazine. He goes by Teacher Tom Hobson. I don't know if you've seen his posts, but his statistics, his analytics are just incredible. And so I dug into them a little bit. And I think a lot of his sharing happens very strategically around Facebook groups. And so sometimes if you know the right Facebook groups to share your content in, that can be a huge boost. What other hacks have you found? I think most of us share our content on Twitter. What are some other hacks that you found in terms of getting out the word on your content? Is there anything else that we're missing, Heather?
Sometimes I can get some interest from LinkedIn. And so I used to work for an education software company a while ago, and many of my friends from that company are still on LinkedIn, and I'm still friendly with them. So they'll end up sharing it with, people who are in the industry, so to speak. And so I do like it, but I would love to hear any other suggestions that anyone has, because I really, it's hit or miss. It's hit or miss.
It's true. Debbie?
Well, I also I do share on LinkedIn. I just started doing that, and on Facebook, which I was a little nervous about because that's like sharing with my personal people with my education stuff. But recently, I've done 3 articles for Teach Better blog. Plus, I've published a few articles for School Rubric magazine, and so.
Cool.
That was kind of strategic for me because I know that they have a little bit more visibility in different places, just trying to share my, what I'm thinking with other people. But also just watching how other people publicize their blogs. I find that, and I really appreciate how you share all of our blogs, because you always have a little different way to look at it. And I'll be like, oh, I should have published it that way. I should have, publicized it that way. That was a good way. Sometimes when you look at your own writing, you can't pick out that perfect quote. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Debbie. And, you mentioned the Facebook personal feed. That's been a recent shift for me. I would say just in the last 6 months, I've finally started sharing my education writing there, just because I've found since I started the podcast, I'm adding more and more educators to my Facebook network. And so I'm like, why not? If it generates some buzz there, I might annoy some of my family and friends, but that's okay. They can just ignore it and, and move on with their.
And part of it also is that my school has a kind of a weird Twitter thing going. Teachers at my school don't really have Twitter, but they all have Facebook. And so I'm friends with a lot of the educators at my school through Facebook. So then it enables me to share my writing with my colleagues in a way when they wouldn't see necessarily on Twitter, since they're not there.
That's a really interesting point too, because I think often we're reluctant to share with our colleagues, right? We don't broadcast our work in a staff room necessarily. It feels like self-promotion, and that gets us a little uncomfortable, but it is so amazing when we get that affirmation and commendation from colleagues, especially when they find it and not, when you're not pushing it in front of them. Kelly, what does that look like for you? What tools do you use to raise your visibility of My TV today?
Okay, so I use Buffer, and I publish through Buffer to various different places. So I publish to Twitter, and to LinkedIn, and to Facebook, and to Instagram. And so I just basically put my whatever I've written and my stuff in there, and I send it out using the Buffer platform. And so it just automatically sends stuff out.
So Buffer is like a Hootsuite platform, right? That just distributes on different platforms. I have mixed feelings about that. I love the efficiency, but I think sometimes like each of these platforms has its own signature, and people can recognize when a Twitter post is machine made, or something like that. They can tell the difference. So
yeah. See, the nice thing is that on Buffer, I write all the posts.
Oh, for each platform.
So I create, so I create the actual things that are going out. It doesn't do it for me.
Okay.
So everything that is broadcast I write the blurb or that little part to it. I take the quote out and put it in there. That's what I like about it. It's not generated by them. I create it. It just gives me a platform so that I don't have to physically go to, Twitter and create posts and then go to LinkedIn and then go to those other places. I can just do it from one place. And I just recently started with like the Facebook and the Instagram. So we'll see how that goes.
Instagram is tricky because you only have one URL, and that's the link in bio. You got to work from there.
Yeah.
Tammy, and I love that you repurpose, that I love this, Tammy, that you repurpose some of your blog content on your podcast, but what tools do you use to raise the visibility of your stuff?
So I use some of the same things that other people do, but I think the thing that I do that might be a little different is that I have found communities like Teach Right, which is all teacher writers, and Two Writing Teachers, which is a blog that's been in existence for a long time. So I try to make connections through there and comment on other teacher blogs. And so like kind of the blog hop where like Two Writing Teachers, they have where they call it Slice of Life on Tuesday. So all kinds of teachers will post to that, and then you can comment to other blogs. So you find other teachers that way, and then you can promote it with those hashtags on Instagram and Twitter as well.
Instagram hashtags, and don't overlook Instagram stories. I've been really big into that in the past year, and stories are a great way. The Instagram algorithm really bumps you up if you're using stories on the daily. So keep that in mind as well. Jamie, what tools do you use to get out your content?
Yeah, I love using all the platforms that we're all mentioning. So right now, for me, I think the two best ones that I really enjoy are LinkedIn and hooking into LinkedIn groups. I think LinkedIn's been very underrated, especially for educators. I think it's an untapped resource right now. And the same with Facebook groups. So I started a Facebook group and joined a ton of those. And that's where I'm getting the most connectivity with other educators. Instagram and Twitter I'm using for more like video content on a daily, just to, hand out free resources, show people what I'm about, what my, what my vision and my goals are and what I can bring to the table. And that's great, especially with the hashtags. Using stories on the gram for sure is absolutely the way to go right now. And then YouTube as well, I think is making a comeback. It's been around forever, but I think with remote and virtual, YouTube now is kind of resurfacing for a lot. So I have a page on every one of them.
All of these platforms want to keep viewers and users on their platform. So I find a difficult choice sometimes is, do you post a link to your Medium post or your blog post, or do you post organically? Because, for example, on LinkedIn, if you post organically a blog post that stays on LinkedIn with no external links, it will perform a whole lot better in terms of the algorithm. So that's an interesting choice.
It's 9 o'clock.
Oh, there's my computer. I've kept you all over time. This has been such a fun conversation, truly inspiring. Let's sign off by letting people know where you can be found. Of course, I'm at Teachers on Fire everywhere, and that's really all I need to say on that. And of course, on Medium. Heather, where would you like people to drop by to connect with you and see what you're up to?
I'm on Medium and also on Twitter at Edick_Heather.
All right. So thanks for sharing your handles right there in the on your name label, whatever that is. And Debbie, I know your Google site URL is a little tricky to share.
It is a little tricky to share. It's like sites.google.com view techie notes. So it's a little bit of a pain, but if you go to at Tannenbaum Tech, you can find all of my links for everything.
All right, there we go. Kelly?
I have basically two places. One is kellychristopherson.ca, and I post, that's where I post my blogs too. And then I have my PD #2 for today. So my PD today. And I tend to, everything is cross shared there. So as I build more of my content, I put it into the my PD today to share with people, but it's cross-linked with my kellychristopherson.ca.
All right, super interesting. That whole idea of cross-posting is something we didn't get into, but I've heard in the past that Google penalizes you if you're posting exact copies of content. So whenever I do that, I try to make a few changes in the post if I'm posting it somewhere else as well. Thank you for that, Kelly. kellychristopherson.ca. And Tammy, where is home for you?
I'm on Twitter a lot at TLBREIT, and then Instagram I'm at InspireTammyB. But also, if you Google me, my Medium comes up, and so does my blog, Tammy's Reading Life, or Accidental Inspirationalist. You can find me lots of different ways.
Thanks, Tammy. And Jamie?
acceptuniversity.com. That'll have all my social sites. I use Accept U with just the letter U as in university for YouTube, Facebook, and my Facebook group page. And then on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, it's at VP_J Brown.
All right, perfect. Hey, group, you inspire me so much. This has been great to connect in real time. And I know we're going to continue to connect and cheerlead and support each other's work on our Twitter DMs and everywhere else. So thank you all for everything you do. Have an awesome weekend. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.
You too. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you
Tim.
so much. This was awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.